Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today at the MSU Science Festival. Today, we're joined by Dr. Edmund Stark to talk about how to see Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn in a single night. I don't know about you all, but I'm really excited for this talk. Thank you so much, Dr. Stark, for joining us today. I'll let you take it from here.
Okay. And there. So as you just heard, I am going to talk about how to see all these planets in one night. But what I also want to do is let me close something off here. I also want to make sure that we have a good sense of what's going on in the sky. So tonight, we're going to talk about Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, and Jupiter, and Saturn, and the sun and the moon. And my name is Dr. Edmund Stark. I'm from MSU-St. Andrews. I do a monthly astronomy night there. And the next one is coming up on May 3rd. I'll have some more information about that at the end of the talk. But what we're going to talk about tonight, how the sky moves hour by hour every night, and how it moves month by month through the year. So give you a little bit of background information so you get the sense of the seasonal and nightly patterns. I'll talk about what's in the evening sky right now, the winter hexagon, where I have this lovely figure over here with Orion in the middle of it. And you'll see a number of constellations. I'll focus especially on Leo, Virgo, and Boötes. And also where Mars is and two bright red stars that are nearby. In the morning sky, there's Jupiter and Saturn and some meteor showers. And in about a month from now, you'll be able to see all 5 planets in one night. Not now, but I'm getting you prepared. And I also promised something on the International Space Station. So, one day and one night in the sky. This is what you'll see if you look. This was done on for March 5th, because that way I could get the sun in. This is the night sky. I've got some of the constellations drawn in. Don't worry about all these. They're just there so you can see them in clearer patterns. I want to mention, here's the moon. And this is the constellation Scorpius, which is visible at this is about 6 in the morning. And I'm going to start this moving, and you will see how the sky rotates. And here comes the sun rising in the east and going across. I want you to pay attention to all the constellations that are still there during the day. You just can't see them because the sun is blinding out the entire sky. But you look up here, here's the constellation of Aries. Once the sun sets, oh, there Aries is. And now this constellations rise and set. They rise in the east, just like Virgo just did. And you'll see Virgo here moving across the sky, and it will slowly get to the west where it will set. And I'm going to stop this after about 24 hours. Here's the morning right before sunrise again. You'll notice that Saturn and Jupiter are here in the morning. And back in March, Mercury was in the morning sky. But I also want to mention, look where the moon is. Now, the moon started out here by Scorpio, and it's gone all the way over here to Ophiuchus. That's how much the moon moves in one night. So if you watch the moon on 2 clear nights, you will see it visibly move quite a bit. And frankly, if you're paying close attention, you can watch it move over the space of several hours if there happens to be a bright star nearby. Now, that motion is caused by the rotation of the Earth, but the Earth has another motion, which you know, which determines our year moving around the sun. So if you were looking at the south every night, you got out at midnight and looked at the south, this is basically the year 2021, starting just before January and ending in January of next year. You can see Orion here. And you can watch Orion moving across the sky and setting. You'll see stars coming in. You see the moon zipping in and out because, as I mentioned, the moon moves very quickly. Saturn and Jupiter here in Capricorn, you see them wiggling a little bit. And here we are 1 year later, and Orion is back in the sky because Orion is a winter constellation. The other constellations were spring, summer, and fall constellations, all available in their own season. Now, you notice the moon zipping back and forth and the planets, because the Earth goes around the sun in kind of roughly a flat circle. It appears that the sun to us goes around the Earth in roughly a flat circle, and that circle is called the ecliptic. And I've deleted all the constellations except some that might be familiar to you. Maybe you don't know where they are in the sky, but you recognize Pisces, and you will notice the sun moving on this line called the ecliptic. It's where the sun and the planets move. It's moving through Aries, and you can see Mercury here going around the sun. Venus is this bright dot here, and it is slowly moving around the sun as it passes through Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, back to Pisces. This is a year. Aries, Taurus, Gemini. These are all the zodiacal constellations. And you can see the sun moving through them in the course of a year, and it does this year after year, and all of the planets are on that line. So now I want to talk a little bit, I'll talk more about the planets later on. I want to start with the stars because they're pretty much hanging out year to year, and they're very familiar. Tonight, about 2 hours after sunset, you look to the east, and this, to give you a scale, this is the point directly overhead. So this is a big section of the sky. Here is a constellation that most people can find, the Big Dipper. It's actually part of a larger constellation. And many of you know about the pointer stars pointing towards Polaris, the North Star. But if you take these handle stars here, and if you make an arc, you will end in a star called Arcturus. It's a bright orange star, so I used orange. And you literally can arc to Arcturus. That's how astronomers remember this. And it is the brightest star in the constellation Boötes, the herdsman. It's a nice kite-like shape of fairly bright stars. Arcturus is the brightest. And it's a good spring constellation to get to know. Now, if you continue off on a tangent of that arc, just kind of go in a straight line, you'll find another star called Spica. And as we arc to Arcturus, then we spike to Spica. I'm not making this up. That is the brightest star in the constellation of Virgo, the Virgin. And so we have a very large constellation here. And these are two good spring constellations that you can get to know. Now, I mentioned the winter hexagon. You see this large hexagon of very bright stars, 6 very bright stars with Orion in the middle and Betelgeuse, not really part of it, but in the center of this. That is, since it's the winter hexagon and you learn about seasonal motion, it is setting. And you can see, looking to the west in the setting sun, here is Orion, almost setting. And here is that winter hexagon with all of its stars and constellations, which I'm not going to spend too much time on because they're in the winter. And you can see their setting. If you find Orion a little bit earlier in the evening, you will find Rigel right down here as the last one in the winter hexagon. But also important for us when you're looking west is Mars right here between the horns of Taurus. And Mars is a bright red star. So is Aldebaran here, and so is Betelgeuse. They form the 3 reddest stars, reddest objects in the sky right now, and they're all together, forms a really nice pattern. And if you go roughly from the head of the bull down here, through Mars, through Gemini, you'll end up with a lone bright star called Regulus in the constellation of Leo the Lion. Now, it's pretty high in the sky, and you wouldn't look to the west over your shoulder to see it. You would turn the star chart to the south. So now we are facing south. There's the point overhead, and here's Leo the Lion. And this is a pretty good constellation because you can see that the haunches of the lion back here, his rear hips, and this backwards question mark is his head with his mane. And what's interesting is right over here is a little star cluster, Malat 111. It's called the Coma cluster. This used to be the tuft of Leo's tail many years ago, and like that little tuft on the end of a lion's tail. Now, it's about 8 or 10 stars that are fairly faint. If you're in downtown setting, don't try to look for this. But if you have a decent sky, especially if you can see the Milky Way, you should be able to see Leo's tail. That constellation here in this map is called Coma Berenices, named after a famous queen, Berenica II, a real person who is believed to have cut off her hair and sacrificed it to the gods so that her husband, King Ptolemy III, would return safely. And apparently he did, and the stars were put in the sky. So we gained a constellation and Leo lost part of his tail. Now I want to talk about where the planets are. Here I've got the sun, and the Earth is going to show up right here, this little green dot. And we're all going around the sun. Here is normally the brightest planet, Venus. It just passed this point called superior conjunction behind the sun, so it's hard to see. Here's the orbit of Mercury, and Mercury is just heading into superior conjunction just 2 days from now. So when you look at what is blocked by the bright glare of the sun, both these planets are toast for most of this month. Mars is over here beyond Earth's orbit, and it is kind of heading back in towards this way. It's in the evening part of the sky. Jupiter off to the right here and Saturn are in their approximate positions over here, and they are in the morning part of the sky. So April isn't too bad. You can see 3 out of the 5 planets. And we'll show you where to look. I mentioned already Mars. It's the only planet in the evening sky. It's high in the west above the sunset. You'll find 3 bright red star-like objects. One is Mars, which is actually the faintest, Aldebaran, which is brighter, and Betelgeuse, I don't know why they didn't put it on here, which is brighter yet, and they form a triangle. And Mars moves roughly 1 zodiacal constellation a month. So Mars will slowly be moving this way if you watch it over a space of a few nights. And tonight and tomorrow night, the moon will be going right past Mars. So it'll be a fun time to see. Venus and Mercury, I mentioned, are near the sun, but I thought I would toss in on April 25th, they will be just emerging from behind the sun. It'll be really hard to see, less than a half an hour after the moment of sunset, but they'll be almost on top of one another, close, about as close as 2 full moon diameters. But they'll be very low in the sky. This will be hard to see. They'll be easier to see in May. If you don't have a clear horizon, wait a month and it'll be better. Jupiter and Saturn, however, are easy to see. Jupiter will be the brightest object in the sky other than the sun and the moon. These planets have been known since ancient astronomy time, since the Greeks, since the Chaldeans. Why is that? Because they're flaming obvious. If you've never seen the planet, I would say you probably have seen both Jupiter and Venus. You just didn't know they were planets. Jupiter will be the brightest thing in the sky, looking off to the east-southeast in the morning. Saturn will be up and to the right. Jupiter is 100 times brighter than Saturn, but Saturn will be brighter than any stars nearby. And May 4th, May 5th, the moon will be passing right by, so it'll make it even easier to see them. So that's what we've got right now. But I want to give you a chance to see all the planets in one night. So in mid-May, I've already moved Mars and Jupiter and Saturn to roughly where they are in the sky, but I want to focus on these planets that are right now behind it or stuck with the sun, Venus and Mercury. By mid-May, Venus will have moved over to this location here, out just a little bit out of the sun's glare, and Mercury will be even a little bit further out of the sun's glare, actually passing by Venus. So these 3 in the evening and these 2 in the morning, all 5 planets will be visible. So how's that going to look? I mentioned it's going to be easier to see Mercury and Venus at the end of the month and into May. Venus will always be, Venus is the brightest star, quote, in the sky. It was called the evening star and the morning star for centuries before people realized it was the same thing. So Venus will always be the brightest object in the sky other than the sun and the moon. Mercury will be above Venus all month of May long. So its peak brightness is actually at the end of April, but it's furthest from the sun in mid-May, and that's when it's easier to see. And I'll give you an advance notice. Mercury will actually be coming back down here as Venus rises up, and they will be one on top of another, less than the diameter of a full moon apart on May 29th. And I'll have more details on that in my family astronomy night for May coming up on the 3rd. And I'm going to show you a video of what that looks like. What I have here, I shouldn't say it's a video, it's kind of a step drawing. This is the end of April, maybe April 27th, and Mercury and Venus are going to rise. And what I've got here is if you are looking to the west into the sunset every day at the same time, you will see Mercury and Venus slowly rise up day after day. Each motion is 1 day, a day, a day. You see Mercury is moving against the backdrop of the stars, which are setting as they should. They're slowly setting in the west. And now here comes Venus, much brighter than Mercury. You can see Mercury is already faded a little bit. Mercury is kind of standing still now, but Venus is catching up to it. And now they drive past each other. That was the 29th right there. And Mercury is going to go back into the sun, and Venus will dominate the evening sky for the rest of the year. So all 5 planets in a single night, early to mid-May. Here's what you do. About an hour after sunset, watch for Venus and the Mercury in the west above the sunset. Venus will be the bright one that's lower down. Mercury is also very bright, but not as bright as Venus. It will be higher in the sky, but it will pretty much always be in the sunset glare. This is, by the way, the best chance to see Mercury for this calendar year. In the evening, also, later on, or at the same time, you can see Mars. Mars will be up for hours. Venus and Mercury set fairly quickly. Then you've seen those 3 planets. Now go to bed early. Get up 2 hours before sunrise. You can get up 3 hours before sunrise if you have a clear horizon. Jupiter will be the brightest star. Saturn will be to the right and above Jupiter, and you'll be able to see them all in the space of about 12 hours. And in the early morning, there are also some meteors, and I also promised to talk about the space station. So the meteors. There are 2 meteor showers coming up. One are the Lyrids. They typically have 15 or 20 per hour. Now, listen to that rate, 15 or 20 per hour. That's about 3 or 4 a minute, 3 or 4, one every 3 or 4 minutes. So if you go out there for 5 minutes, you may not see anything. If you go out there for 10 minutes, you might see 1, or you might see 4 or 5. It's random, but you're not going to see 1 every second. That's what some people think of for a meteor shower. Unfortunately, the moon will be out. It will be a gibbous moon, and it will brighten up the sky, and it'll be hard to see the fainter ones. A better shower, this will be a fine shower, but a better one will be on May 4th or 5th, the Eta Aquarids. It'll be about a similar number of meteors, but the moon will be less than quarter moon. It'll be a crescent. So therefore, it will be easier to see the fainter ones. So I'd recommend both, but if you're going to choose one, just this one. But whatever day you get up to see this, to see Jupiter and Saturn, you can look for the meteors. And you can also look for the space station. In the next few weeks, the only times it is visible is in the morning. If you've never seen the space station, it is not hard. It is as bright as Jupiter, and it is moving. You can't miss it if it's in the sky. If you're looking in the wrong direction, you will notice it. It will typically emerge from the Earth's shadow at some point. So like 10 degrees above the horizon. It will continue, or here in this case, it will move around, get high, and then come back down and disappear into the Earth's shadow again. So it'll be hard to see it appear, but you will definitely notice when it disappears. It simply winks out. It's a pretty cool thing. So are there any questions? Before we get into them, I'll mention that you can contact me at msu.edu for a copy of the observing tips. So basically almost a copy of these slides where I've shown you where to look for what constellations and what little arcs and spikes to use to find them. And also I'll put in a plug for MSU's monthly family astronomy night. The next presentation is Wednesday, May 5th at 7 p.m. So do we have any questions?
For those of you on Zoom, you can use the Q&A feature. And for those of you on Facebook, you can comment your questions. Thank you so much, Dr. Stark. I've really enjoyed this talk.
Thank you.
So I guess I know you said that this was like the very big highlight of 2021, but are there any other really interesting things happening later on this year?
Well, the one thing I like is the conjunction of Venus and Mercury that's coming at the end of May. One thing that is actually coming tomorrow night, but isn't visible from here, is the moon. For here, we will notice that the moon is appearing to pass by fairly close to Venus. It will actually block it out, and we won't be able to see that from here. But it's an occultation. It will happen. I'm sorry, I said Venus. I meant Mars, and it will be visible from parts of Asia, but in Africa, but not from here. So that's a kind of a cool thing. And I enjoy eclipses, but there are no good eclipses that are going to be visible here.
I also read something about how there's going to be a pink moon this month. Why does the moon appear in different colors? I'm not sure if you know. I know this is different than what you were talking about, but it's something that's been on my mind.
It's open season for questions. The pink moon, I don't think implies the color. I'm wondering if it's like the flower, the pink, which is a spring flower. Many of these moons, like the hunter's moon or the harvest moon or the hunger moon, the cold night moon, are actually based on names given by the Algonquin peoples, which have been translated in English and have persevered. So soon we will have the strawberry moon, for example. So that's where many of these names came from. If there's, sometimes you might hear of a red moon, that would actually be a moon that you would see during an eclipse when the moon appears red.
Thank you. And there's also a question in the chat that says, how often can you see 5 planets in one moon?
You will see 5 planets, maybe once every, I guess it depends on how hard you have to look. Jupiter and Saturn each are visible for maybe 10 or 9 months out of the year if they're not too close to the sun. And the same thing is true for Mars. Mercury is the tough one because Mercury is always zipping back and forth in front of the sun, behind the sun. So Mercury is only visible easily for about 2 weeks every, let's say, 3 months. And so catching Mercury when all the other planets are visible is difficult. There will be a few more opportunities, but since this year, there will be several more opportunities, in fact. But this is a really good time to see Mercury. So in order to see them all, this month or this coming month, May, is the best opportunity.
So to clarify, it's not very often that we're able to see 5 planets in one night.
Right. And what's also an option is with binoculars, if you know where to look, it's a little harder. You can easily see Uranus, and from a clear sky, you can easily see Neptune. So there have been nights when you can see 7 in one night, but that's a little rare.
Someone is asking on the Facebook comments, could you repeat about the space? Can you repeat about the space station time to see it?
Sure. Again, if you want to see these times, you can go to this website here, Spot the Station, or you can get, if you want to go to, if you want to just email me, I can send you that slide. But basically, oops, wrong way. These are the times where it appears, and it will be, so if you're looking at this first one on the 24th, it will appear 10 degrees above the south, so about here. It'll be visible for 5 minutes. It'll reach a maximum height of about 20 degrees, and just reading off the slide, and it will disappear over here in the east about 10 degrees above the horizon. So that's what all these things mean. And we have 3 good chances to see it. Sometimes you don't have any opportunity to see the space station for several weeks. Sometimes you have like 10 opportunities in the space of 2 weeks. So it comes and goes.
Yeah, I was thinking it's not like every morning that we're able to see it. So I think I'll keep an eye out for that. I'll wake up at 5 a.m. for this, seriously.
Yeah, like
so
you can't miss it.
Any more questions, everyone? I know that Facebook, we will have a few seconds delay, but I'm keeping an eye on you. For Zoom, please direct them to the Q&A. And in the meantime, I would also like to ask, oh, never mind, there's something in the Q&A. How high is 10 degrees?
Oh, that's a good question. Here's a good, handy thing to use. It's basically your fist. If you held your fist out at arm's length like I'm doing now, from here to here is going to be about 10 degrees. And you can check that now because you know that from the horizon to the center of the sky is about 90 degrees. So you should be able to just imagine putting your fist so many times up, and you will come up that somewhere between 8 and 10 fists will get you to there. So it's fairly low. If you have trees or something like that, go to a park or go to a parking lot that gives you a clear view of the direction that you're hoping to see. So the south and east, or southeast to east southeast. So go to a parking lot that gives you a big flat area where there isn't going to be a house in the way.
Yeah, it sounds like 10 degrees is just two fists on top of each other then.
Well, 10 degrees would be one fist.
Oh, okay. So one fist is 10 degrees. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm glad that I asked that because I heard 5 degrees. All right. So any more questions on the Q&A and on Facebook? I see some people have been thank you for your presentation. I would also like to thank you on behalf of myself and from MSU Science Festival. I really enjoy astronomy talks, and I always think it's a lot of fun. It always makes me want to stay up all night and look at the night sky.
Well, that's exactly the kind of response that we hope to have. So I enjoy giving astronomy night talks and astronomy talks in general. And I especially like if I can do something to, science has changed over the years. And now science seems to mean for many children, adults as well, sitting in front of a television and just learning. And that's a wonderful thing to do. I would never discount that. I love that. But what's lost is going out and seeing and or doing for yourself. And there is so much that can be learned just from going out and looking, that I would always encourage that. If you understand truly the astronomical knowledge that the ancient civilizations had, and they did not even have telescopes. They knew about things like the precession of the equinoxes, which is almost complicated enough for me not to talk about for most astronomy nights. And they did all that without telescopes. So, and they knew the orbits of the planets. They knew the Earth was around. They knew how big it was. They knew how long the year was, down to within a few minutes. It's truly amazing.
Oh, yes, I agree. Someone said, can you please repeat what time the next night is?
The next, it should be here. The next astronomy night, meaning the MSU astronomy night, because I'm only doing one talk for the Science Festival, is May 7th at 7 p.m. And again, if you have any questions on any of that, or if you would like to be included on the distribution list that tells you, warns you, I should say, when the next astronomy nights are coming, you can contact me at that address and I will put you on the list, or I will email you a printable version of the slides that we've had that are pertinent towards stargazing.
Yeah, so for some people that may be tuning in that are not in Michigan, that's May 5th, 7 p.m. Eastern time. I know that now that we're virtual, we have people outside of Michigan who are joining our talks, and I'm really grateful for that too.
And that's why I made sure to put Eastern Daylight Time, because there are a few, I think maybe some places in Indiana, there are some places that do not use daylight time. They would use standard time. So when everybody moves their clocks forward and back, not everybody does that. So I try to make sure that the time is clear.
Yeah, well, thank you again, Dr. Stark. I really enjoyed this talk. And on behalf of MSU Science Festival, thank you as well. Everyone else, if you enjoy astronomy like myself, we will have more star talks tonight and more astronomy talks tonight as well. So please stay tuned, and stay tuned for the rest of the month for MSU Science Festival for the rest of our science talks for the month of April. Thank you again.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.